Fiona, being educated at Nambour High School, there's a proud history of prominent politicians in that particular school. They put a lot of time and effort into educating their students about politics at Nambour High.
I don't think so. I think it's just one of those schools that had a great eclectic background.
Wayne Swan?
That's right. There's quite a few very prominent members of Parliament who've had their education at Nambour High.
I wonder what it was. But there was a particular teacher there, maybe, or interesting. Yeah.
Well, there were over 1,000 students when I was there. It was a pretty big school.
Yes,
so
yes.
When you've got those schools that are catchment schools, they do have students from across the background. I very proudly went through the state school system, Yandina Primary, Nambour High, and I think it's a great thing that your schools can produce people from across the spectrum of politics and also many, many different professions. So it's got a pretty good history.
If we go back to, say, grade 12, I know you had plans for doing a bit of overseas travel, we'll talk about. Do you have an idea of where you might be in 15, 20 years' time at that stage in your life?
You know, I don't think I looked at a 15-year plan. I think probably about a 5-year plan,
yeah.
And with your study and the sorts of career that you're going for as a young person. And obviously my choice to go to Japan as an exchange student was a very defining choice. Yeah. Those milestones that are along the way that have a huge impact on your life, and that was a particular experience that really impacted my educational choices.
Now, when you've been studying French, and I understand that you're fluent in French as well, why then choose Japan?
I wouldn't say I'm fluent in French.
Well, things move on over the years.
Oh, I mean, I can order a coffee, but very handy. Look, I don't know why I did high school French, but it was a hoot. We enjoyed it, but I seriously found that going to a country like Japan was a wonderful way to learn a language. But I think one of the beauties of living in a culture that's very different from your own, it exposes you to the different ways of living, the fact that not all families are the same, even if they live within a culture. That's quite an important thing. You can't generalise about a community. Everybody's different. And the other thing is you get an appreciation as to what it would be like as a foreigner in a country. And I think I've always had a lot of overseas friends, a lot of Asian friends here in Australia, students. I think an awareness that it's different when they come into your culture and they need to find their way and to have an understanding of what it's like as somebody who doesn't speak the language coming into Australia and what that means.
So you went to Japan having no Japanese?
5 words, so you have to learn in a hurry.
Wow.
Didn't have the opportunity at school in those days. Yeah. There's a lot more opportunity with languages, and I think it's really important that we do have Asian languages in our schools. This is the region we live in. We can't just rely on others to be our interpreters, to be the ones who engage in business or culturally. We have to have our people, Australians here, who are able to go out and speak these languages and engage with our region. I think it's really important.
It lets a lot of people down, that attitude that everybody speaks English.
Absolutely. It's amazing, the countries in our region, how good a number of their people are at English, but we need to understand the languages of our region. I'm talking about the Asia-Pacific region in particular. Some may have a passion for languages around the world, but particularly in our region, it's very, very important.
Now, tell me about your experience on the Harry Redford cattle drive. Now, from what I understand, this is you jump on a horse and you drove the cattle from one direction to another over best part of 1,000, maybe 1,500 kilometres.
Well, I just did a section of it.
Okay. So tell me how you remember that experience and what drove you to get involved in that in the first place. What drove you to get involved?
Well, yes. Well, look, I love a bit of outdoors adventure, and it will only give you a little insight into what it may have been like for those who it was a way of living and the way they used to move cattle across this great nation of ours.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was an experience. It's a cultural experience. That's about, if you like, in the true Australian way, remembering the bush rangers. Some of them were criminals, but Harry Redford had a very colourful background where he allegedly stole cattle. When he appeared before the court in Roma, the jury actually sided with Harry Redford and let him off, and the judge at the time was quite outraged. So it's a bit of colourful Queensland history. So the cattle drive was about reenacting that, and it was for a charity. I only did a small section of the whole 1,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
And it was great.
It's good fun to spend a couple of days in the saddle, although it does have its shortcomings, doesn't it?
Well, one thing I learnt was I've grown up around horses, but you're riding in very flat country. It's very different from if you're hiking up and down over mountains. So it's a bit kinder to those of us who've perhaps not spending as much time in the saddle anymore.
How's your Japanese these days? Are you still as proficient as you might have been?
Look, I get by. I'm conversationally proficient.
Conversation is where it's at.
I wouldn't go and interpret for a medical conference, but I love the fact that language opens doors, and just giving it a go opens the doors for people to connect. And I have a very warm spot in my heart for Japan.
We're going to talk about other things that you've done. You actually left journalism to do some recording. Now, you've been a musician, a gospel singer. How does that take its place in the life of Fiona Simpson? Where did that originally fit in?
Well, I did grow up singing in church a lot, though most of the singing I do now is in the community. It's not church-based. I do a lot of community-based singing, particularly around Christmas time.
Yeah, strangely enough,
And I love it. It's something that I suppose just adds a lot of enjoyment to my own life, and it's something that you can give enjoyment to others too. And it's something I try to do.
So growing up singing in church, was there particular influences that were strong influences on you musically?
Look, there's a lot of music I enjoy, but your own vocal style, what you can actually sing yourself, I don't have the ability to sing a lot of the modern pop stuff, though I enjoy a range of music styles. I'm probably more of a ballad singer.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't say I'm operatic, but I'm a mezzo-soprano. Love singing, and I love working in small groups and duets with good friends.
Do you do some vocal training over the years to sort of hone your instrument?
I did do some training, yeah. So I learnt the piano, but the singing training that I've had has helped. Though I probably should do a little bit more, because the voice is an instrument that needs ongoing work, and I probably haven't been kind to it with all the running around with the day job, so to speak.
It's hard to keep your instrument rested in
tone
and in
that's
tune. Yeah.
It's not like a piano that sits in the corner and you can control it a little bit more, but your voice is very susceptible. But look, there's lots of wonderful singers. I'm not the world's best singer, but I love singing, and it's something that you can bring joy to people, particularly when you're working in small groups. I love harmonies and doing that kind of work.
So how do you maintain your involvement in doing those types of community events? Do you have a band that you work with, a bunch of people that you get together with and jam on the weekends? I know you don't have a lot of spare time.
I've got some very good friends who are great musicians, and they probably do a lot more, well, they do a lot more than I do consistently, so sometimes they're kind enough to let me join in. I might borrow their musos, because you do need good backup.
Yeah, it's very important.
Well, we've got the Sunshine Coast concert band on the Sunshine Coast, the Budrum concert band. So some of the big concert bands, big sound behind you, that's fantastic.
It's an amazing feeling.
It's
and a wonderful music scene in general across all sorts of genres on the Sunshine Coast.
There are some really, really good local bands, and that sort of backing with the big band or the big orchestra. There's amateurs, there are music teachers. It's a mix of people who love their music, and some of them are really good. And I think that what they're doing in their local community, they're doing a lot of concerts. So when I have the chance to join in with them and sing with them, I feel quite privileged.
Yeah, very privileged. Yeah. You're watching Meet the Ministers. We'll be back after the break.